Yontif, Shavuos. I was walking back from the Young Israel of Oceanside, and it's about a 30-minute walk back to the hospital. And I was thinking about what I would say if my mother, God forbid, would pass away. And unfortunately, as what happened this morning when my mother was nifteres, suddenly, you don't remember anything that you were planning on saying. The last few hours have been Bahala, been trying to make arrangements. We don't officially have a flight even to Israel yet, but we're assuming we're going to get on it. But I'm going to talk from the heart because that's the only way to really express, I think, my feelings. And I think I'm expressing the feelings not just of myself, but of Devorah, of Jane and Barry and our entire mishpacha about the truly remarkable woman that my mother was. I want to first start with a thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who has been unbelievable in the way the chesed he did for my mother on so many levels through her life, no matter where we were, all the way until today. The chesed he showed her is unparalleled, and you can never possibly have enough hakaras hatov for what he does for us every single day. My mother was born in Visho de Sus, Romania, on the first day of Sukkot of 1927. It was Tafshin Peicha. And unfortunately, her mother was nifteres 2 weeks after her childbirth from an infection that she got at childbirth. And my mother basically grew up as an orphan, as her father gave her away for her aunt and uncle, my namesake Moshe Yaakov, and her aunt Meryl to raise her. So she grew up with a very difficult time, and she, as she had said to us often, she never spent or never remembered sleeping a night in her father's house. She forgave her father, but it was something that was on her mind, I think, her entire life. Childhood was okay. She's living in Romania, I guess like a normal level of anti-Semitism, which we're starting to experience today. But in 1940, the Germans, in a sense, gave over control to this area of Romania to the Hungarians, who were very, very difficult to deal with. The Jews were not allowed to go to school anymore. She finished her education at the age of 12, helped out, but life got much more difficult at that time. She persevered, and then after Pesach, the day after Pesach, in 1944, she was put into the ghetto of Visho de Sus with many, many other thousands of people. I believe 30,000 people were transported from there to Auschwitz. She survived the trip over. When she actually arrived there on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, survived the trip, and went through the selection of Megillah, where she lost her aunt, who was with her at that time, I believe her grandmother. They were, as again, Megillah separated them, and they went to the gas chambers. I was listening yesterday to a tape she made 40 years ago at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. This, I believe, was the first Holocaust survivors gathering in America. And she related to her experiences at that time. And first the confusion when she found out about her loved ones were in the crematorium next door. And then the difficulty of the day-to-day existence, the boredom, the hunger that every person who lived through the Holocaust went through. She experienced that all. She was there for 6 months, and then afterwards was taken to Targo, a munitions factory, where conditions were slightly better. She survived the war, was liberated on April 26, 1945, and went back to her hometown, where she met her brother and her half-sister, who had survived the war. She had lost the other siblings and half-siblings, I believe it was 4 others during the war, and a brother before the war, actually in the middle of the war. She came back, there was nothing there. They sold their house and they went to the DP camps. My mother was in a DP camp for 3 years, and she said in some ways the DP camps were more difficult than, if you can believe this, than Auschwitz-Birkenau, because there was no hope, there was nowhere to go, which tells us how important the state of Israel is. Finally, in 1949, she was able to come to America. because of Harry Truman, who led 100,000 Jews into this country. She came, and my father came a little bit afterwards, and yet they did not marry. They met in the DP camps, and they did not marry, however, until January of 1951. They were married by the Vishnu Rebbe in Brooklyn. She had grown up in a Vishnu community and a Hasidic community in Vishon. One of the amazing parts of that story is the reason she didn't get married for such a long time period is they refused to rent a one-bedroom apartment because they needed a second bedroom for my mother's half-sister to be able to stay with them. And that sort of attitude really exemplified the selflessness that my mother and father, Zichron Avracha, always had over their life. Both Jane and I grew up in a home of simcha, a home of emunah, and a home where we were really loved by our parents. A generation that would do anything for their children and do even more than that for their grandchildren and for their great-grandchildren. Not only that, but then when we both got married, they took on our spouses 100%. I have to say something at this point. My mother, after my father died in 1999, my mother spent much of her time in our house, Shabbos and Yom Tovim. Devorah was the person who hosted her, the quote-unquote daughter-in-law, all those years. And the efforts and the respect that she showed to my mother over all that time period was surpassed. They both loved each other, and they both learned from each other. So my mother did not have an easy upbringing, as we just explained. But everybody, including this morning, everybody who came over to me said, the midah that your mother expressed all the time was simchas hachayim. She had it all the time. She had an appreciation for everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to her. She was a Tehillim Zoger. She would go through Sefer Tehillim every single week. She would daven mincha for my children. They would have them in mind for different refuahs that were needed. But she never thought of herself. It was always thinking about others, and she exuded that simcha with the happiness and the smiles on her face. It's very hard to encapsulate a full life like she had, but the lesson we take from a person like this is no matter what we're going through in life, we have to have such an appreciation for the bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us every single day, that we were born as Jews. The reason I'm here as a firm Jew is because of my mother. It was essential for her that, and for my father, that I go to yeshiva. My sister, we both had this religious upbringing because of my mother. My mother refused to work on Shabbos, as I listened to the tape about this yesterday. And that was a very important message that we were given, and that's the reason we grew up from. My father's family, Kimat, is nobody from in that family, and my mother is who pulled my father in the right direction. She has incredible schuyos going up to Shemayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewarded her with a very fulfilled life, a life where she had truly no suffering, no pain for the 97 plus years that she went through. She had tremendous simcha from going to all the simchas in Eretz Yisrael and here, including the last simcha, which was Elisha's bar mitzvah. And how many people who saw her at that bar mitzvah could not believe how happy a person she was. And even though she had dementia in her last few years, she still knew her family. She felt that family. And yet, she also was able to show that when she was living nautilus to all the people around her. She exuded happiness and love, and it was reciprocated to her all the time. The last 3 months have been difficult. My mother was to the hospital 8 times since March 2nd. My mother made it to the hospital one time with 106.7 temperature. She had aspiration pneumonia. She had everything you could imagine. Yet she fought on. She had the simchas of Chaim, and she had a tremendous will to live all the way till the end. Her doctors told me they could not believe how long she survived, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave her the incredible bracha that her survival was not surrounded by any pain, including yesterday, including this morning. I can't possibly thank Hashem enough for that bracha. It's very hard to encapsulate 97 years, and I think I'll do more of that, obviously, over the Shiva. But I feel a responsibility to give a tremendous Hakar Satov to very special people. And I want my mother, who is here, to hear this also. We've been blessed incredibly from the guidance and help, first of all, of this community and very close friends around us who were in constant contact with us, asking about my mother and caring about my mother. I can't thank enough the people in my Daf Yomi who cared and always was inquiring with us, and the ability to keep on learning and learning on Zoom while I was sitting in the hospital with our Chabura was unbelievable and was so meaningful for myself. It was sort of the ballast, as Rabbi Akiva talks about in my day. My mother lived the last 5.5 years till these last few months at the Nautilus. She was blessed with tremendous aids, but I think most importantly, she was blessed with Melody Cassimer, who takes such an interest in all the people there and gives them a simchas chayim that they can go through with their last years of their lives, and I have to thank you personally for that. There was a lot of need for rabbinical instruction over these past few months. Rabbi Feiner was always there for him when I reached out to him. Rabbi Leibowitz was always there when I reached out to him. Rabbi Reisman was there as a steady hand for myself. But I have to especially thank Rav Asher Weiss, who was incredible on very difficult shilas, including 3 or 4 times this week. And I can't have a proper amount of appreciation for what he provided for myself and for my sister, that we were following halacha kedas kedin. I have to mention the hospital. So my mother was in Mount Sinai South Nassau. The hospital's treatment of my mother was incredible. When I thanked the nurses this morning when I left, I said, you were with such respect that you treated her, no matter who you were. She had great nurses through this period, a great emergency room. But I have to single out 4 doctors who were exceptional for my mother. First of all, Dr. Zev Carey. He's the main doctor at the Nautilus, and he took care of my mother for 5+ years. Even when my mother left the Nautilus, he was in constant contact with myself and provided tremendous aid in times of difficult decisions. At the hospital itself, we were blessed with 3 different shluchim who were incredible. Dr. Altis, the pulmonologist, experienced hand, very rational, wonderful person. Dr. Kanina, who took such a love to my mother. I sent her a video of my mother yesterday for her to watch, because she had really grown an attachment to her, and she commented to me this morning what kind of special person she was and what an honor it was for her to treat my mother. And then Dr. Stephen Greenstein, who went far and beyond what any person could ever imagine, being available nonstop over this period through difficult shilas and guiding me on the proper methods of how to deal with the shilas, how to ask the shilas from a medical perspective, and interlacing halacha throughout. There's no way possibly, on behalf of my mother, to thank all of you for what you've done for me. Finally, I have to thank, one other thing, I have to thank the premier. My mother was not there for a long period, but Isaac Wiener and the staff there was wonderful, treated her with the same level of respect. But finally, I have to thank our family. And this is for Jane's family, and this is for our family. The respect and the love you showed to my mother always. And she felt it, and she loved giving back to all of you. The constant concern you had for her, the way you reached out to her, the way she reached out to you through all the years and through these last few months was really incredible. Jane, you were phenomenal going through this period in the hospital. It wasn't just me. We had Sandra to help, and you were an incredible help, and I can't thank you enough for everything you did. Devorah, you've gone through a difficult year. It's hard to be in Avelis and then have to see this with my mother, especially given the relationship. And you were incredibly supportive for me over this last 3 months. And then finally, again, I have to come back to where I started. I have to thank Akash Baruch Hu. I never imagined I would have had a chance to be Mechabed my mother in the way I did the last 3 months. He gave me that opportunity. It was an unbelievable honor. I can't say enough words about that. Ma, please be Malchamei. We all did the best we could for you. Bilo Maven and Netzach. Malchamei, Malcha Hashem Akalcha, Dimemel, Mal.